It's the All Things Strange podcast. I am your host, Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can find all of our wonderful links in the description on the Linktree, where you can find our Patreon, our Discord, our merchandise, and more. This week's episode, the Salish Sea Feet. That's a strange title for you. Before we get started, we've got Patreon. 2 wonderful tiers of Patreon for you. The first tier, coming in at a measly $3, will get you bonus episodes, after hours, and early access to the show. That's right. As soon as it is done editing, it goes right onto the Patreon. Those other slobs gotta wait a week. All right. Well, they're not slobs. They're dear listeners. Apologies for the offense. Anyways, the next tier will get you, coming in at $5, will get you the ability to vote on upcoming topics, such as this one. Every week for the regular episode, well, it's kind of bi-weekly now, but every regular episode I put it up to vote, and the listeners on Patreon get to decide what we do next. Pretty exciting stuff. Well, let's get into it. The Salish Sea Feet. August 20th, 2007. A girl finds a shoe on the shores of Jedediah Island in the Salish Sea. She picks it up, horrified to discover it contains a dismembered foot. This was the first of many to come in the Pacific Northwest. I kind of feel like this would be a better episode for Halloween, for the Halloween season. Jeez. Imagine you're walking along, having a great day at the beach on a beautiful island, and you see a shoe and you think, well, that's kind of weird. And you pick it up and there's a foot in the shoe. No, thank you. For those of you who, like me, are geographically challenged, here's a description of the Salish Sea from Wikipedia. The Salish Sea is a marginal sea of the Pacific Ocean located in the Canadian province of British Columbia and the U.S. state of Washington. It includes the Strait of Georgia, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, Puget Sound, and an intricate network of connecting channels and adjoining waterways. The sea stretches from the channels of the Discovery Islands north of the Strait of Georgia to Budd Inlet at the south end of Puget Sound. It is partially separated from the open Pacific Ocean by Vancouver Island and the Olympic Peninsula. Much of the coast is part of the Pacific Northwest megapolis. The region is anchored by Metro Vancouver to the north and Metro Seattle to the south. Other principal cities on the Salish Sea include Bellingham, Port Angeles, Port Townsend, Everett, Tacoma, Olympia, and Bremerton in Washington, and Victoria and Nanaimo in British Columbia. As of 2021, the region was home to 8.76 million people. The Salish Sea is about 440 kilometers long and has a surface area of about 18,000 kilometers squared, or 6,900 miles squared, which is roughly the same size as the Gulf of Riga in northern Europe. This combines the total surface area of the Strait of Georgia, Strait of Juan de Fuca, Puget Sound, Desolation Sound, and various other bodies of water. The sea has an average depth of 130 meters, or 430 feet, and reaches a maximum depth of 670 meters, or 2,200 feet, in the Jervis Inlet. That's, what is 200? It's like a third of a mile, or almost half a mile. That's pretty deep. The Salish Sea contains more than 400 islands, most of which can be grouped into one of 3 island groups: the Discovery Islands, Gulf Islands, and San Juan Islands. So that's what we're talking about, that whole area up there. It's a large area. It's north of where I live. So if you think of a map, it's more or less that body of water where the USA meets Canada on the west side. So the modern feet finding of this is considered to have started in 2007, but actually, the finding of feet in this area was much earlier than 2007. The first known foot was found in 1887 on Vancouver Beach. It washed up in a boot along with part of its leg. By the way, if you decide to Google some of this stuff yourself, yes, there are pictures you can find, and they're generally not that gruesome because the feet are generally hidden in the shoe, so you don't have to look at a mangled foot. I did see one picture where there was like a leg bone sticking out of a shoe. I don't know if it was legit or not, but if it was real, if anything, it looked comical. It looked like something you'd see in one of these cheesy parody horror movies or something. It's weird. So there's another foot reported on July 30th, 1914, near the mouth of the Salmon River. This is something that's been going on in the area for a long time. And who knows, maybe there are even more feet that were found but just not reported between 1914 and 2007. Also, being an area that might have some parts that are somewhat remote, it begs the question, if they found these feet, I wonder how many have gone unfound. Are there thousands of feet out there just waiting to be found and that nobody's stumbled across them yet? I don't know. But nothing is ever 100%, so you would think there are at least some that haven't been found. Hey, a great vacation, right? If you're looking for a great vacation spot and something to do that's not your typical tourist stuff, go to the Salish Sea on vacation and look for feet. It's a fun little game you can play with yourself, take your significant other and have a great time. So the first modern foot was found in modern foot. The first modern foot was found August 20th, 2007. It was a size 12 white and blue running shoe that was mostly sold in India, of all places, and that's kind of interesting. That suggests that the person it came from was possibly a tourist or who knows what. Maybe they immigrated from India. When I first heard of this case, my initial theory was that a rare deep sea plant was mutated through pollution and exposure to human DNA and started growing feet that occasionally escaped to the surface. But then again, the problem with this theory is, where would the shoes come from? Do they grow with the foot on the plant? Maybe it's not a great theory, but I like the idea. My mind goes to these strange places. And if there's no plausible explanation for this, where did they come from? Mutated ocean plants. Or maybe there's some kind of fish or shark or something that got mixed up with human DNA somehow, probably through a nuclear accident of some kind involving radiation and Godzilla. And as part of their growth cycle, they grow a human foot on their head or somewhere else, and as they get older, it falls off and floats away. And maybe it floats through some piles of trash and embeds itself in a shoe. I don't know. Anyways, this is stupid. I'm gonna knock it off now. So over 20 feet have been found so far. And it begs the question, if there's a normal, non-paranormal explanation, why don't we find feet like this all over the world? When I was younger, I lived in Southern California, and we would go to the beach fairly regularly, especially in the summer, and not once did I find a foot. Not even once, having gone to the beach many times. So it begs the question, what's up with that? But anyways, before we get ahead of ourselves and start talking about theories and whatnot, let's talk about some more of the found feet. The second modern foot was found less than a week after the first, on August 26 on Gabriola Island. The second one was a man's right foot. It was discovered by a couple and had a waterlogged appearance. Ugh. The next one was found on February 8th, 2008. It was a right foot. It was a size 11 Nike. The shoe was sold in Canada and the United States between February 1st, 2003 and June 30th, 2003. This was found on Valdez Island, British Columbia. So we have a variety of shoes here. It's not just from one particular location. And that's important for some of the theories later on, if we have a diversity of shoes and feet. The next one was May 22nd, 2008 on Kirkland Island, British Columbia. This one was a woman's right foot in a blue and white New Balance sneaker. The island it was discovered on is in the Fraser Delta between Richmond and Delta, British Columbia. This one was wearing a sock and a sneaker. The fifth foot was found in Westham Island, British Columbia. It was a man's left foot, and it was found by two hikers on June 19th, 2008, floating in the water. It was later determined that this foot found on June 19th was a match to the foot found on February 8th on Valdez Island. So that's the third foot found in February 2008. Its partner was found on June 19th, 2008. So quite a gap there. It's interesting. You wouldn't think for a foot to last that long out on its own in the wild, but apparently it did. The sixth foot was found on August 1st, 2008. It was a right foot inside a man's black size 11 shoe, and this one was discovered by a camper on the beach covered in seaweed. The shoe contained bones and flesh, as you might I don't know why that's in the description, but that's what they put. And this was the first foot of a series of feet to be found outside of British Columbia. The RCMP and Clallam County Sheriff's Department agreed on August 1st that the foot could have been carried south from Canadian waters. The seventh foot was found on November 11th, 2008. This was a woman's left foot in a shoe floating in Fraser River in Richmond. It was a New Balance running shoe. The eighth foot was found on October 27th, Richmond, BC. It was a right foot in a white size 8.5 Nike running shoe, and it was again found near the area of Richmond on the Triangle Beach area. The ninth foot found on Whidbey Island, Washington, August 27th, 2010. This was a woman's or a child's right foot. It did not have a shoe or a sock, which is really unusual. Most of these were found with the shoe, and we'll talk about why that is later. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves or talk about spoilers. It was determined that this foot had been in the water for 2 months. Detective Ed Wallace of the Island County Sheriff's Office released a statement saying the foot would be tested for DNA. However, they did not find a match in the DNA database. I mean, this is all just so bizarre. Random feet washing up on shore, and they can't be identified? Well, we'll get to that later. But still, extremely strange. All right, the 10th foot was found on December 5th, 2010 in Tacoma, Washington. It was found on the tidal flats. It was found inside a boy's size 6 Ozark Trail hiking boot. Man, that is just really sad. That's just so tragic. The 11th one was found on August 30th, 2011 at False Creek, British Columbia. It was in a men's white and blue size 9 runner, sex unknown, so its genitals were missing apparently, floating next to the Plaza of Nations Marina, and it was attached to the lower leg bones. Apparently it was cut off at the knee rather than the ankle, where most of these feet are cut off at the ankle. Really weird. The 12th foot was on November 4th, 2011 at Sassamat Lake, British Columbia. It was a man's right foot inside a size 12 hiking boot, and it was discovered by a group of campers in a pool of fresh water near Port Moody. The 13th foot showed up on December 10th, 2011 at Lake Union, Seattle, Washington. It was a human leg bone and foot in a plastic bag under the Ship Canal Bridge. 14th foot, January 26, 2012, Vancouver, British Columbia. The remains of what appeared to be human bones inside a boot were found in the sand along the waterline at the dog park near the Maritime Museum. This one had probably been there for quite some time, since it was just the bones. Probably it washed up on shore, got covered by sand, and was there until it became uncovered. Who knows how long it was there? I mean, could be years even. The 15th foot was on May 6, 2014 at Seattle, Washington. This one was a human foot in white New Balance shoe, and it was found on the shoreline of Centennial Park near Pier 86. It was a New Balance Model 622 athletic shoe, size 10.5. It was first for sale in April 2008, and it was a left foot. So we know a general time frame because of when the shoes were sold. I guess that's the one useful thing when you buy running shoes, if you do actually buy running shoes, and then when you need to replace them, you go to the store and you say, well, I'd like this same pair, but you can't find the same pair because they update the models several times a year and they change them and you don't know what the new shoe lineup is. So you have to spend all this time reading about what one is equivalent to the one you just had that you want replaced. What a mess. But anyways, the upside in that is if you're finding dismembered feet, it makes it easy to put a minimum time frame on that. By the way, I don't go jogging that much because I don't know, I just don't like jogging. I hate jogging. But I do have jogging shoes. They're really nice if you're going to do a lot of walking. They're really comfortable on the feet. And the brand I like is called Ultra, Altra, because I have wide feet and the toe box of Ultra shoes are like foot shaped rather than being the shape of not my foot and makes your foot kind of squished up in there. Those are the ones I like. They're pretty expensive, but they last a long time. So I don't know, just a little diversion there. If you, dear listener, have ever wondered what shoes does Agent Anderson wear? Well, for running shoes, it's Ultra. Okay. The next one was the 16th foot was found on February 7th, 2016. Hikers on Botanical Beach near Point Renfrew on Vancouver Island found a foot in a sock and running shoe. Got a twofer there, free sock and free shoe. The 17th foot was found on Vancouver Island as well on February 12th, 2016, just a few days later. And this one was, again, near Port Renfrew, Renfrew. That's an awkward word to say. Port Renfrew on Vancouver Island. And it matched the foot found on February 7th. So hey, they got to rejoin the long lost lovers, I guess, The 19th foot was found on May 6, 2018 on Gabriola Island, BC, British Columbia. This one was found by a man walking along the shore, and he found a hiking boot with a human foot inside, and it was wedged in a log. Man, that would be quite the surprise, right? To find something like that. The 20th foot was found in West Vancouver, British Columbia on September. Well, it doesn't have a date on the notes. It just says September 2018, so I guess we don't know exactly. This one was a foot within a light gray Nike Free RN shoe, and it was on the shore near the 30th Street Beach access point in West Vancouver. It was a 9.5, and it was made between the 1st of February and April 17th in 2017. It was probably a male foot, and it had a blue sock. That reminds me of, have you guys seen The Three Amigos? There's a joke in there, in that movie, that I actually use sometimes, and it gets people. It's that part where they're standing outside the saloon, and one of them says, the Ned character says, "Oh, look, it must be a male plane." And then I think it's Chevy Chase's character. It was, what's his character's name? I forget. And he says, "Oh, really? How can you tell?" And he says, "Can't you see the two little balls?" I shit you not, this works on people. And then if you wait a year or so, and then it'll work on the same person again. It's pretty pretty hilarious joke. At least I find it amusing. Other people may not. I don't know. Moving right along, the 21st foot was found on January 1st, 2019, on Jetty Island in Everett, Washington. This was a foot found in a boot. The 22nd foot was found on November 21st, 2021, so a couple years later. And this was found on Locust Beach in Bellingham, Washington. It was a size 7 Brahma work boot washed up on Locust Beach, and it was just west of Bellingham city limits. The foot was inside of a tube sock, and it was just the bones. Probably had been there for a long time. The 23rd foot was found December 2021 at Port Angeles, Washington. It was a size 8 New Balance shoe that had washed up on the mouth of the Elwha River. 24th foot was on July 23rd at Gonzales Beach, Victoria, British Columbia. And there's not a whole lot of details for this one. Maybe it's still under investigation, who knows. And the last foot might actually be the least foot, because it was small, was found on December 9th, 2025 at Port Williams Beach, Washington. It was a woman's Puma sneaker, and it was a size 5 to 5.5. It was found 50 feet north of the Port Williams Beach boat launch. So those are the feet that have been found so far. Like I said, they are constantly found. Apparently, they're still being found pretty recently. There's nothing from 2026, but that's only because you guys haven't gone out there and looked for them. So if you want a hobby, oh my goodness. This story, as you can imagine, kind of blew up in the local headlines. It's all very mysterious. It's a little frightening, and it was covered pretty heavily by the local media. But it actually even hit the international headlines to a smaller extent, and it was even covered or discussed briefly on the David Letterman show. I think he had some Canadian audience members, and he asked them about it. Hey, well, you guys got the feet over in Canada, huh? Well, some of them were in the United States as well, but it's thought to be more of a Canadian kind of a thing. All right, that's the feet. That's the basic gist of it. Now let's talk about theories. There's a lot of really fun theories for this case. Spoiler alert, they pretty much know what the cause is, so the mystery isn't there. But before we get to the probable cause, let's talk about some of the theories that have been proposed over the years. First up, you know it, you love it, the extraterrestrial waste theory. Of course, we were going to talk about aliens somehow being involved with discarded feet. I did read a blog before about human mutilations. So there are cattle mutilations, of course, everybody's heard of that, but I ran across a blog having to do with human mutilations that are thought to be involving aliens, kind of like cattle mutilations. And I got to tell you, there were photographs, and it was not a whole lot of fun to look at, so I didn't actually read the entire thing. But I wonder what the evidence is. I couldn't stomach the photos, so I didn't bother to check, but that's kind of interesting if they have good evidence, or at least circumstantial evidence, that humans are being mutilated as well as cattle. This particular theory is one that is more online in forums and discussion groups for the paranormal. This is not a mainstream theory at all. The idea is that aliens would abduct people, and whatever they did with those people, maybe they ate them, maybe they dissected them, maybe they experimented on them. Whatever they did, they ended up killing the people, possibly dismembering them, and then disposing of the bodies in the water. The people who are proponents of this theory point out that the detachments, if you look at the photos, which I didn't bother to look at a ton of them because I don't really want to. If you, dear listener, want to investigate for yourself, feel free, but I don't like looking at disembodied, rotting body parts. But they said that the detachments or the cuts looked like they were surgical, or cleanly cut off. So that's why they think that it could have been aliens that cut the feet off, like with a laser or something like that, to dismember the victims. There's not really a whole lot more to that. There really isn't any evidence that I could find to support the alien theory other than pure speculation, and it looks like the feet could have been cut off using a tool or instrument. However, if it had been a tool or an instrument, it could have very well been a person or people rather than aliens, because as you know, people have tools and lasers and things as well, which brings us to our next theory, the foot collector. People speculated that there was a serial killer, often referred to as the foot collector, and this is probably the most popular theory that was tossed around the interwebs. They thought that there was a serial killer who cut off the feet and did something else with the body. Maybe they kept the bodies as trophies, buried them somewhere else, or who knows what, but they dumped the feet in the water as like a calling card or signature, or perhaps a way to taunt law enforcement. There have been serial killers in the past that leave calling cards, they leave their mark, or they leave evidence behind on purpose as a way to like taunt the police and say, you can't find me. I'm too smart. One of the ideas behind this theory is because the feet have been found in such a wide area, but only in one particular region. You know, they're not washing up in the Gulf of Mexico, they're not washing up on the East Coast. It's concentrated to a large area within a region. This led people to believe that the serial killer was operating out of that region, and that that they were moving around and doing their kills in different locations. Now, I haven't talked about it yet, but some of the feet have been identified. I didn't mention that earlier because it kind of ruins the suspense if, you know, you talk about the first foot found and say, oh, by the way, we know where it came from and whatever. You know, I wanted to build up to that, be a little bit more mysterious, right? Some of the feet were identified, and they're a wide variety of people. There are people who were lost at sea. There are people who are hikers. There are people who are known to have suffered from depression. There were people who committed suicide. It's a pretty wide range of people. It's not one type of person. So that suggests that it wasn't a serial killer. Serial killers tend to target one type of victim over and over again. However, if you were a serial killer and you did not want to be caught, then you might target different types of people in different areas so that you didn't have a predictable MO. This is probably the most probable or possible alternate theory, and it can coexist with the main accepted theory, which we'll get to later. So I'll talk more on that in a bit, I guess. All right, the next one is the evil, horrible organ harvesting syndicate. This theory says that there's a black market organ harvesting ring operating in the Pacific Northwest. Basically, they kidnap their victims, harvest their organs, and then weigh down the remains and dump the bodies in the ocean. And then we'll talk about with the main theory why the feet would end up washing ashore. This one is kind of fanciful and unlikely. To harvest organs safely is pretty complex. It's not like in the movies where you can just chop somebody's liver out of them and then just take it and put it into somebody else. You need to have a very clean room so that they don't get infected. You have to transport the organs in a very specific way. This one, it is plausible, I suppose, in that it is plausible that there are organ harvesting syndicates out there murdering people for their organs. I haven't looked into that, but it's something that could happen. But other than the fact that this is something that could happen, There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to say that it did. It's pure speculation, but hey, sometimes it's a lot of fun to speculate. Why not? Right, here's another one, a weird one that I came across: the tsunami voyagers. In 2004, there was an Indian Ocean tsunami, and also in 2011, there was a tsunami in Japan. People believe that victims were washed away from the tsunami, brought all the way to the Pacific Northwest, and that's how their feet ended up there. It's an interesting theory, but it is based on a kernel. I should say it is based on a kernel of truth, because debris from Japan did wash up in British Columbia from this tsunami. However, it does seem unlikely that a foot or an entire body would make the journey. I mean, anything's possible. I suppose it is theoretically possible, but there's no evidence for it, and the feet have been found for many years. Some of them seem to have been there for a long time, but this one, I guess it's fun to speculate about, but I think it's really unlikely that a tsunami would wash a body all that way. But then again, if you think about it, a tsunami is a really powerful force of nature, and I suppose it could drag a whole lot of stuff over from Japan. So maybe this one's a little more plausible than I thought. I mean, I don't think it's likely to have happened, but I guess anything's possible. So they did, as I said, they did identify a lot of these feet. They did examine them for all sorts of evidence where they cut off or whatever. And according to what I found, there was no evidence of cutting on the remains, no satanic rituals involved. The feet were not chopped off on purpose. That happened naturally. They actually did an experiment to figure this one out, because it is pretty puzzling and it seems extremely unlikely to find a severed foot one time, let alone over and over again. It's just really weird. And I'm sure local authorities were very concerned about the cause. Who knows what could be causing it, right? But this would be very alarming if you were working in law enforcement. So researchers got together and they used a pig carcass in the Salish Sea as a stand-in for a human cadaver. I mean, you can't exactly throw a person in the water. Maybe somebody would donate their body. I don't know. So what happens is that the bodies usually sink, especially if it was a drowning victim, because the water fills the lung, the body is no longer buoyant, and they tend to sink to the ocean or sea floor. Once they're on the sea floor, the body starts to decompose, and there's two ways this can happen. The ankle joints are pretty weak, so as the body decomposed, it's theoretically possible for the foot to just sort of break off as a result of underwater currents and whatnot, because it's not really attached all that well. However, they found that once the body was on the floor of the ocean or sea floor, sea life like lobsters and crabs quickly devoured the carcass, and they do so rather quickly. And in the process of doing this, the feet are separated. They're protected by footwear, so the sea life can't get to that foot as easily as it can the rest of the body. So probably that's not the first thing to be eaten. So I should have given you guys a gruesome warning. This is pretty gruesome, but as they consume the body, the foot will naturally detach from the body because, as I said earlier, it's not strongly attached. And because it's in a shoe, it will float up. Shoes tend to be buoyant. They can have pockets of air trapped within the shoe, but also the foam used to make the shoe is generally porous and has air trapped inside of it. The body, not porous. The shoe, porous. So as soon as it becomes detached, it floats up to the surface of the water and it becomes carried away to the shores. Now, this is also pretty gross, but I read that when a body starts to decay in cold water, The fats in the tissue turn into a soapy, wax-like wax-like substance called adipocere, Adipocere, adipocere. And this preserves the feet from scavengers for a longer period of time, but doesn't stop the joints from weakening. So I guess if the body is not eaten right away, then that's how you could get a foot to preserve differently underwater. I guess it wouldn't decompose as quickly as it would on the surface. And marine scavengers like crabs and lobsters prefer the softer tissues, so they will tend to feast on the connective tissue and cartilage around joints. And again, since the ankle is weak, then it gets detached, the foot gets detached relatively quickly. So once it starts floating up, wind and currents bring it to the shore. Most of the feet were found in tennis shoes or running shoes. None of the feet were found wearing something like high heels or flip-flops or something. Some of the feet were found without shoes, and it's possible that those feet were in a shoe that wasn't tightly laced up or something, and it fell out at some point after it arrived upon shore. Now, this brings up something in my thought process. I mentioned something sort of like this earlier, but it's different this time. Based on the type of shoe, you could theorize that if only tennis or running shoes are found, that's only a subset of the total amount of shoes out there. So for instance, what percentage of the population wears high heels? Well, more than zero. So that suggests that there are many, many more feet out there that are just not in a shoe conductive to being floated upon shore. So there's a lot of feet out there in the Salish Sea. We're only finding some of them. Kind of brings you right back to my mutant theory, right? No, not really. That was the dumbest theory I've ever come up with. The point is, though, is that suggests that the number of feet being found is only a small portion or some portion of the total number of bodies in the Salish Sea. Kind of creepy if you think about it. Keep that in mind the next time you want to go swimming in the ocean, guys. Right? You could be swimming in dead people soup. And the last thing I want to mention is, like I said earlier, the serial killer theory can coexist with the scavenger theory or the sea life theory. Just because the feet detached due to natural decomposition or sea life scavenging doesn't mean that the bodies weren't put there through foul play. Not every one of the feet found belonged to a suicide victim. Some of them were people who were known to have been at sea on a boat. Some of them were people known to have been hiking in the area. So it's plausible that there's a serial killer that isn't necessarily focused on the feet. They don't care about the feet all that much, but they might murder somebody in the area, take the bodies out in the middle of the night, dump them in the middle of the sea, and make a clean getaway. And if this is the case, that suggests that this is a very prolific and successful serial killer, because as discussed previously, less than 100% of the feet are going to end up being found, and less than 100% of them will even end up floating to the surface. If somebody's wearing flip-flops or a lighter shoe like high heels or something like that, that doesn't stick to your foot, it's not laced up to the ankle, it comes off a lot easier, then the sea scavengers would probably just eat the foot right away. It won't have a chance to float up and get to shore. So these theories can coexist. It is possible that some of these people died of foul play, and it seems kind of short-sighted to me to propose the idea that, well, the feet were not severed by the serial killer or by any killer. It was severed by natural predation. So therefore, it was a natural death. That's a bit of a non sequitur to me. So I hope that the people investigating this would do a little bit more in-depth investigations and keep their eye out for a serial killer of some kind, because I think that's a real possibility. I think that it's very possible there could be a serial killer in the area, because it seems like an unusual amount of bodies to be hanging out in the ocean. And, so there's a serial killer and there's a natural cause for the feet floating up to shore. That's kind of my theory. I think that's possible, but at the end of the day, we don't really have enough data to make that determination. All right, well, that's the show. That's all I got for you on the Salish Sea Feet. This was a weird one, guys. It was a lot of fun to read into, to read up, and to investigate. Very, very strange case. Thank you guys so much for listening. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to leave a comment or give a like or a good review or whatever in the comments or anywhere you can. Different platforms have different things available. That stuff really helps out the show, and I appreciate it. And if you didn't like the show, why are you still listening? Maybe it's just the sultry sounds of my voice. And if you really like the show, check out our Patreon. We've got a ton of bonus content on there going back years and years. So for a small price, you could sign up, listen to whatever you want, and then just cancel it. No, don't cancel it. Just, I got more stuff coming, you know? Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, keep it stranger.